The industrial sector of the colony loomed ahead. Rusted gantries, shattered skylights, and conveyor belts frozen in time. Once a hub of production, it now served as a Threxer research site, where metal met flesh in horrific fusion. The air smelled of scorched circuitry and something far worse, the unmistakable scent of decay. Elias crouched behind a collapsed support beam, scanning the facility's entrance through his scope. 2 Threxer sentries patrolled lazily, their elongated rifles humming with latent energy. Beyond them, deeper in the complex, lurked something far more dangerous. The experiments. He turned to the others. We go in quiet, take out the guards, get to the lab, and synthesize more of Myra's weapon. No heroics. Loco cracked his knuckles. Define heroics. Elias sighed. Let's just not get killed. Mira pulled a makeshift grenade from her pack, cobbled together from a repurposed drone core and the Threxer corrosive agent. We only have 3 doses of this stuff. Make them count. Yuki unsheathed her combat knife, its blade dull from use but deadly in her hands. We get in, we finish this, and we make sure they never try this again. Briggs checked the power cell on his rifle, for the people we lost. Lynn swallowed hard, clutching a stolen Threxer plasma cutter. She was no soldier, but she refused to stay behind. Elias gave the signal. They moved. The silent war. Yuki struck first. She slid from the shadows, her blade flashing as she silenced the first Threxer before it could even react. The second barely had time to turn before Elias fired once, dropping it where it stood. They pushed inside, moving swiftly past rows of steel tables stained with dried blood. Suspended containment pods lined the walls, each housing a grotesque fusion of human and alien biology. Some were dead, others twitched, still alive, but far from human. Lynn's breath hitched. This is genocide. Mira gritted her teeth. No, this is theft. They didn't just kill us. They stole what made us human and turned it into something else. Elias forced himself to look away. Let's make sure they regret it. The last monster. They reached the research core, a chamber dominated by a massive containment cell. The glass was cracked, thick cables snaking into the floor. The lights flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. Then the breathing started. Slow, deep, not human. The creature stepped from the darkness. It was larger than the one in the jungle, its exoskeleton reinforced, its limbs elongated into razor-edge appendages. Its yellow eyes burned with intelligence, not a mindless beast, but something aware, calculating. Briggs whispered, "They made a commander." The creature moved fast. Before anyone could react, it ripped through a console, sending debris flying. The team scattered, firing as they ran. Bullets pinged off its armor. Plasma rounds sizzled against its hide. Nothing stopped it. It lunged at Loco. He barely dodged, rolling behind collapsed terminal. Mira yanked a corrosive grenade from her belt. "Buy me a second." Elias sprinted forward, drawing the creature's attention with a barrage of gunfire. It turned, its gaze locking onto him, and lunged. Mira hurled the grenade. It detonated midair, showering the creature in hissing, bubbling acid. It shrieked, its exoskeleton melting, limbs thrashing wildly. Yuki didn't hesitate. She leapt onto its back, driving her knife into the exposed flesh beneath the armor. It roared, staggering, its movements becoming erratic. Elias seized his chance. He raised his rifle, aimed for the exposed tissue, and fired. The creature collapsed, its body convulsing before finally going still. Silence. Then Loco exhaled. Holy hell. Mira wiped sweat from her brow. We need to move. Now. The end of the experiment. They reached the chemical lab and got to work. Mira synthesized as much of the corrosive agent as she could while the others set charges throughout the facility. If they were leaving, they were taking this place with them. Briggs armed the detonator. 5 minutes. Lynn hesitated. What about the one still in pods? A heavy silence fell. Elias clenched his jaw. They wouldn't want to live like this. Lynn looked away. I know. Yuki stepped forward and disabled the life support systems. The monitors flatlined. The suffering ended. Mira finished loading the last vials into their packs. Done. Let's go. The final blow. The team ran as the first explosions tore through the lab. Fire and metal erupted behind them as they burst onto the colony's streets. Sprinting toward the evac shuttle Briggs had kept hidden. The Frexer reinforcements arrived too late. The facility imploded, a roaring inferno swallowing the research, the experiments, and the monstrosities the Frexer had tried to create. As the shuttle lifted off, Yuki watched the flames consume what remained of the colony. Loco leaned back, grinning despite the exhaustion. You know, if we get back to HQ, I'm putting bioweapon killer on my resume. Mira snorted. You have to get a real job first. Elias exhaled, looking at the burning wreckage below. Humanity had come to Vortanes, 7 and lost. But they had left something behind. A lesson, if the Frexer thought they could turn humans into weapons. They had no idea what humans could do when pushed to the edge. The remains of Vortanes 7's colony rose from the jungle like the bones of a dead city. Walls once reinforced against storms now sagged inward, their alloy plating scored with deep, jagged slashes. The outer defense turrets lay in ruins, wires spilling like entrails. The colony gates stood wide open, an invitation or a warning. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. If anyone's alive in there, they didn't leave the welcome mat out. Mira swept her scanner over the entrance. Minimal power signatures. Could be survivors hiding deep in the infrastructure. Loco peered through a scope. No movement. But I bet my last ration bar something's watching us. Yuki exhaled. Then let's not keep it waiting. They entered the colony, moving in a tight formation. The streets were eerily silent, lined with abandoned transport skiffs and flickering hollow signs. Then Elias saw it, the first body. It was human, slumped against a supply crate, dried blood staining the ground beneath it. The wounds weren't from Frexer weaponry. They were deep punctures and long, surgical slashes, as if something had been studying rather than killing. Mira knelt beside the corpse, jaw clenched. Autopsy would tell us more, but my best guess? It wasn't a clean kill. Because it wasn't meant to be, Yuki murmured. The Frexer experiment on survivors. They don't just kill, they learn. Loco spat. We better make sure they don't learn anything else from us. The resistance. A metallic thud echoed from the alley ahead. The team spun toward the sound, weapons raised. A hatch grated open, and 2 figures emerged. Humans, alive. The first, a grizzled man with a cybernetic arm, aimed a battered rifle at them. The second, a gaunt woman clutching a medical scanner, gasped in recognition. You're not Frexer, she whispered. Elias lowered his weapon. Neither are you. The man hesitated, then motioned them forward. Inside. Now. The team followed them through the hatch into a dimly lit bunker, the last stronghold of the colony. The truth about Vortanes 7. Once the door sealed shut, the man exhaled. I'm Captain Jonah Briggs, Colonial Security. This is Dr. Lynn Everett, and you just walked into hell. Yuki stepped forward. We picked up distress signals 3 months ago, but nothing since. What happened? Lynn rubbed her temple. The Frexer came without warning. Their ships darkened the sky, and within hours, they'd overrun us. But they didn't attack like an invading army. She swallowed. They hunted, abducted. We fought, but their weapons. She shook her head. We never stood a chance. Mira crossed her arms. What about the creature in the jungle? It wasn't Frexer. Briggs's cybernetic fingers curled into a fist. That's the real nightmare. The Frexer didn't just invade. They were conducting experiments, splicing human DNA with something else. His expression hardened. That thing out there? It was one of us. A heavy silence fell. Yuki whispered. They were trying to make a better predator. Lynn nodded, and they succeeded. A plan born of desperation. Elias exhaled. How many survivors? Briggs hesitated. 12. Down from 500. Loco's jaw tightened. And how many of those things are out there? Briggs was silent. Lynn answered. More than we can handle. Elias turned to Mira. Think we can weaponize that corrosive agent? She ran a hand through her hair. I can try. If we can synthesize more from the remnants of the Frexer lab, we might have a shot. Briggs nodded. The lab's in the old industrial sector, but it's crawling with both Frexer and those things. Elias cracked his knuckles. Then we'd better get creative. Loco grinned. Now that's my kind of plan. The jungle over Tannies. 7 pulsed with alien life. Vines coiled like living ropes. Phosphorescent fungi pulsed softly in the dim undergrowth, and unseen creatures whispered through the leaves. Each step the team took sent up the scent of damp earth and something metallic like rusted iron. Like blood. Elias moved at the front, scanning the trees with practiced caution. Loco followed close behind, humming under his breath as he adjusted the jury-rigged flare gun holster on his belt. Mira walked with her datapad in one hand, occasionally stopping to analyze the environment. Yuki brought up the rear, gaze flicking between the jungle canopy and the colony map glowing on her wrist. The colony should be another 18 clicks east, she said, assuming it's still intact. Loco kicked a spiked alien plant out of the way. Assuming we're still intact. Elias held up a fist, signaling for silence. The team stopped. The jungle had gone too quiet. No rustling leaves, no distant clicking of insects. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Then came the churring. Low, rhythmic. Mechanical. Drones, Mira whispered, ducking behind a tree. Elias followed suit, pressing against the rough bark. Through the foliage, he caught glimpses of the machines, 6-legged, insectoid constructs skittering through the undergrowth, their reflective carapaces distorting the light around them. Frexer recon units, Yuki murmured. They must have picked up the crash site. Loco adjusted his grip on the salvaged Frexer energy rifle they'd taken off a corpse. We take him out, or are we running? Myra's fingers danced across her datapad. We don't have the firepower for a direct fight, but her eyes lit up. I think I can jam their sensors if I repurpose the ship's distress beacon. Elias raised an eyebrow. How fast? 30 seconds. You've got 10. Mira dropped to her knees, yanking open a survival pack. Wires, circuit boards, and a small emergency transponder spilled onto the jungle floor. She worked fast, soldering connections with the tip of her multi-tool. The drones drew closer. The air hummed with static as their cloaking field shimmered. Loco tensed. Any time now, genius. Mira flicked the switch. The jungle exploded with feedback. The drones jerked in place, their carapaces flickering erratically. One let out a high-pitched shriek before collapsing, legs twitching. The other spun in confused circles, optics dimming. Elias didn't hesitate. Move! They sprinted through the trees, leaving the malfunctioning drones behind. Improvised warfare. 2 hours later, they reached a clearing dominated by the twisted remains of a Frexer outpost. The metal framework stood half-collapsed, as if something had torn through it with brute force. Looks abandoned, Elias muttered. Recently. Mira pulled a sensor probe from her pack and waved it over the rubble. Residual energy signatures. A fight happened here, maybe a few days ago. Yuki ran a hand over one of the gouges in the metal plating. This was a weapon's fire. These are claw marks. Loco grinned. So the Frexer pissed off something worse than them? I like this planet. Mira ignored him, checking a fallen Frexer drone half buried in the dirt. Its power core was intact, but its programming was fried. She pried open a panel, fingers dancing over exposed circuits. I think I can rewire this, she said. Make it run a feedback loop through their comms network. Elias nodded. Do it. If we jam their signals, we get a head start. As Mira worked, Loco rummaged through the wreckage. He emerged holding 2 cylindrical canisters covered in Frexer glyphs. Think these are explosives? He asked. Mira glanced up. If they are, you probably shouldn't be shaking them. Loco sighed, setting them down gently. You people have no sense of adventure. First contact. The clicking returned. Not from drones. From something bigger. Elias motioned for silence. The team scattered into cover, just as 2 Frexer soldiers stepped into view. They moved with precision, spindly frames wrapped in shifting camouflage, their elongated rifles scanning the wreckage. Mira froze mid-sentence. Yuki's breath caught in her throat. Elias raised his weapon. Then, something rushed from the jungle. A blur of dark muscle and jagged spine slammed into the first Threxer, tearing through its armor with hooked claws. The second soldier barely had time to react before the creature snapped its mandibles shut on its throat. It was massive, 7 feet tall, hunched forward like a predatory cat. Its chitinous exoskeleton shimmered between black and deep green, adapting to the environment, for yellow eyes burned like embers. Yuki's fingers clenched around her knife. That's not Threxer. The beast sniffed the air, then turned toward their hiding spot. Loco swallowed. Anybody got a plan? Elias exhaled. He was already forming one. Mira, remote trigger one of those canisters. Her eyes widened. You don't even know what's in them. Elias grinned. Guess we're about to find out. Mira tapped her datapad. The canister hissed, then detonated. Not with an explosion, but with a violent burst of luminescent gas. The creature reeled back, screeching. Its chitin cracked, steam rising from the exposed gaps. Good news, Mira breathed. That was a corrosive agent. Loco grinned. Bad news, it's still standing. The creature snarled, then turned and vanished into jungle, its form blurring like a mirage. Elias exhaled. We need to move. Now. Mira grabbed the reprogrammed Threxer drone and slung it over her shoulder. This thing should keep their comms scrambled for a while. Yuki stared at the trees. That creature. What if it's not just attacking at random? Elias gave her a look. What are you thinking? She hesitated, then said, What if it's hunting Threxer? A silence fell over the group. Loco shrugged. Fine by me. Let's just make sure we're not next on the menu. Elias adjusted his grip on his rifle. We get to the colony. We find out what happened. And if that thing comes back... He glanced at the smoking canister. We make more of these. The Vortanes. 7 briefing rooms smelled like recycled air and stale coffee. Captain Elias Kane leaned against the holodable, arms crossed as the mission dossier flickered to life. He had seen enough doomed expeditions to know when he was being sent to die. This is a recovery op. The mission commander droned, tapping the planetary schematic. The Vortanes' 7 colony went dark 3 months ago. No distress signal. No warning. Just poof. He snapped his fingers. We lost 2 recon drones before command authorized a team. That's you. Elias exchanged a glance with Dr. Mira Patel, the team's engineer. She was already pulling data onto her wrist pad, frowning at the atmospheric readings. Luis Loco Ramirez, the weapons specialist, leaned back in his chair, feet kicked up, chewing gum like a man with no regard for classified briefings. Yuki Tanaka, the team xenodiplomat, sat forward, hands folded, absorbing every word. This isn't just a search and rescue, Yuki said. Something's hunting on that planet. The commander hesitated. We suspect a non-human force. Elias exhaled through his nose. Threxer? A murmur rippled through the room. Humanity had encountered the Threxer before, tall, insectoid, and ruthless. They weren't an empire nor raiders. They were something worse. Opportunists. They harvested, they experimented, and when things went wrong, they left behind ghost worlds. You're jumping to conclusions, Mira said, but she didn't sound convinced. The point is, the commander continued, we need boots on the ground. Command won't authorize heavy arms in case diplomacy is still an option. You'll have standard-issue sidearms, recon gear, and survival kits. Elias resisted the urge to laugh. You're sending us to a potentially hostile planet and we get handguns? You'll improvise. Loco grinned. Now you're speaking my language. Descent into hell. The dropship rattled as it tore through the storm-laced atmosphere of Vortanes 7. Lightning split the sky in jagged blue veins, illuminating the sprawling jungle below, an endless canopy of twisted black trees and phosphorescent vines. Elias kept one hand braced against the bulkhead. Anyone else getting a bad feeling about this? I always have a bad feeling, Mira muttered, tightening her harness. Yuki, seated across from her, studied the colony blueprint on her datapad. The settlement was built with self-sustaining hydroponics and high-density alloy shielding. If the colonists had a chance to barricade themselves, they might still be alive. Loco adjusted the makeshift bandolier across his chest, which held everything from ration packs to a roll of industrial duct tape, or their buffet for whatever's waiting down there. Before anyone could respond, the cockpit alarm shrieked. "Incoming!" the pilot bellowed. The world flipped sideways as an unseen force slammed into the dropship. The metal screamed in protest. Elias was weightless for a moment, then impact! The crash webbing yanked him back into his seat as the ship spun, debris flying. The jungle canopy shredded around them like wet paper before they plowed into the ground. Darkness. Stranded. Elias came to with a taste of blood in his mouth. The dropship was a mangled ruin. Twisted metal speared through the trees. Sparks rained from the exposed circuitry. "Status," he croaked, pushing himself up. Mira groaned nearby, struggling out her restraints. Alive. Annoyed. Loco was already on his feet, prying open a storage locker. "Ship's trashed, but I found the emergency kit. And, flare gun." He grinned. "Told you we'd improvise." Yuki staggered out of the wreckage, holding her arm. "We need to move." The ship's distress beacon activated on impact. Elias wiped blood from his forehead. "That's the idea." A low, clicking sound echoed through the jungle. Not a bird, not wind, something else. The team froze. Mira whispered, "That's not friendly, is it?" Loco slid the flare gun into his belt. "We're about to find out." Elias scanned the wreckage. Their weapons were intact, but they had no heavy artillery, just survival knives, compact pistols, and a handful of signal charges. Yuki pointed at the trees. "Something's moving up there." Elias followed her gaze. Shadows shifted in the canopy. Then a flash of chitin, Threxer armor. "Contact!" Elias muttered. "Stay low." Myra's fingers danced across her wrist pad, linking to the ship's remains. "I can trigger a reactor vent. Flood the area with ionized plasma, short-range EMP." Loco grinned. "And fry whatever's out there?" "Love it." Elias nodded. "Do it." Mira punched the command. A roar of energy surged through the wreckage, sending a wave of blue lightning through the underbrush. The shadows screamed. Elias didn't hesitate. "Move." They sprinted away from the wreck, plunging into the dense foliage. Behind them, charred alien bodies twitched in the fading light of the plasma burst. Loco let out a whoop. "Now that's how you make an entrance." Elias shot him a look. "We just lost our ride home." "Yeah, but we gained some breathing room." Mira pulled up her map. "The colony site is 20 clicks east." Elias checked their surroundings. The jungle hummed with unseen life, and the shadows at the edges of their vision never quite stood still. He set his jaw. "Then we better start walking."